this is one of our joints here. The joint bars we use on this 40-pound rail are 4-hole joint bars. On the bigger rail, on some of the modern mainline rail, there'd be a 6 or sometimes an 8-hole joint bar. I just wanted to kind of explain. We get a lot of questions about why, when we bolt these together, do we alternate the bolts? The reason we alternate them is because traditionally, if there was ever a derailment at this joint and the wheel came off the outside of the rail, it would probably shear off these bolts on the outside, but it wouldn't shear off the bolts that are facing on the inside. So the joint would stay together and prevent further damage. You wouldn't have the entire train coming off the track. You would be able to roll over this joint even with 2 of the bolts sheared off. So that's the reason why they do that. And so we kind of copy that and do the same thing. So we're going to take a look down the track here. We're going to keep doing our little walk. And there's a section down here that I can talk about super elevation on this curve down here and how that works to help keep trains on the track. Okay, so here's our track on the north side of our loop. And just to kind of tell you how we did this, this track is basically skeleton track, but it does have some ballast that we've dumped here in preparation for tamping. It doesn't have all the ballast that we would normally put. We haven't got that far yet, but we do have the 2 shoulders done, and we have to fill in the middle yet. We're just going to walk along here. We're going to be taking a look at these. The main thing is these joints and joint bars. We've got joint bars on both sides. We want to make sure that none of these bolts are broken. The rail isn't broken or split in any way, and that everything looks good. Now, about 50 feet up the track last fall, we did have a broken joint. We had a broken joint bar that had to be replaced, and that was the first one that we've ever had. Now, this track hasn't been here that long. It was just laid 2 years ago, but we've already had one broken joint bar, so we're kind of looking for that. So we're going to start walking along here. We'll just kind of keep our eyes peeled. Another thing that we do run across is track spikes that are pulling out. Our track spikes are threaded, so they usually don't do that. But we have found some that are loose. Sometimes you find some that were not correctly screwed in all the way, so the heads are sticking up on it. And if we see that, we can mark that and come back later with an impact and fix that problem. So we've come up to a curve here, super elevated curve on the main line. This is in the northeast corner of our loop, the front part of the railroad. And this is one of the few areas that we've actually got enough ballast into it so we were able to completely ballast it and tamp it. So we've tamped it all by hand and using picks and shovels and whatever we could get our hands on to get it up. And basically what's going on here is this is a super elevated curve, and this curve has 1 inch of super elevation, which means that the inside rail is 1 inch lower than the outside rail. Whenever you have a curved track, you want to have the outside rail higher than the inside, so that especially at high speed, it throws the center of gravity of the train back to the center of the track. And it doesn't allow the center of gravity to be on the outside edge where it could cause a derailment and the train could tip over. So this is a real big safety feature. And so we probably started with 6 inches of ballast on the outside shoulder, and as you can see, we had to gradually add this up. Using track jacks, we brought this outside edge up and kept filling in ballast until we were able to measure across and get our 1 inch of super elevation. And that super elevation cuts out on the other side of the curve And it also cuts out on this side of the curve right before that grade crossing over there. So far, I don't see anything wrong with any of this track. Another thing you can have in the winter months, this might be a good example if you want to come in a little closer, is you can have what they call pull-aparts, where you'll have a rail joint like this that, because of contraction, the rails shrink in the wintertime and they can rip these joints apart. This is actually a pretty wide joint here, but it's not, you know, it's not to a point where it's going to cause any kind of a problem. And during the summer, these rails will expand again and they will fill this joint back up. Not completely, there'll still probably be a 1/4 inch gap here. But, and we had to leave these rails with a gap like this. They came from the mountains of Colorado. So they left a little bit of extra gap, and all these holes for these bolts are punched in the rail for this gap. So we could not change the gap. We had to use it the way it came. But so far we haven't had a problem with it. So now we're coming down to one of our 2 curved grade crossings. Now this one is in the northeast corner. It's right next to the curve we just looked at, which is probably one of the tightest curves we've got. We don't know what the degree is yet. We haven't measured it, but so anyway, on these crossings, they get full of dirt, they get full of ballast, and we have to constantly clean these things out so that we don't have derailment issues. The important thing on a crossing is the flangeway, and the flangeway is the inside edge of the rail all the way to the first crossing timber on the inside. This has always got to be clean. Now this one's it's pretty clean. We've got a lot of leaves here, but that's not a problem. It's when you get a lot of rock built up from 4-wheelers and side-by-sides coming over the crossing. That's when it gets dangerous. Your flanges on your car wheels and your locomotive wheels will roll over these rocks, and it could cause a derailment if they get built up too much. So we usually send a crew out here to clean them out. Clean railroad is a happy railroad. Good. Well, this crossing is not too bad. I don't see any other obstructions here, so I think we're good.